Hi and welcome to the Vintage Read Show. Well, the Duchess of York is being well defended against the revelations in the glimpses the Daily Mail is providing by publishing sections of Andrew Lownie's book. Defended by the usual sycophants and toadies, a carefully placed photo op looking tragic, Sarah is expert at playing the victim. However, the facts give us an insight into her character that firmly counters that rather sympathetic story. I'll tell you why I have no sympathy. I reserve my sympathy for all those that have been burnt by her appalling behaviour since the mid-1990s. It's well documented that the Duchess of York has used the sad tale of a lousy divorce settlement to excuse her untenable financial position for decades, and if only it was true. We learn that the Queen bailed her out of debt several times during her 4-year separation from Prince Andrew from 1992 to 1996, six-figure sums, one reportedly £500,000, before finally drawing the line upon the official divorce. The true cause of Fergie's constant poverty was her life of excess. Yet unpaid bills prompted her to go on yet another holiday rather than face any form of reality. Her extravagant lifestyle, spending money on a truly epic scale, money she clearly did not have. In this fourth glimpse entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York by Andrew Lownie, we hear that Princess Margaret wrote a rather scathing letter to the Duchess of York, and this is the quote: "You have done more to bring shame on the royal family than could ever be imagined." Pot calling kettle, Margaret? Maybe. At least Margaret never had her toes sucked or tried to sell access to her husband. There were daily deliveries of very expensive wine, a whole army of staff, including a cook, a driver, a maid, a butler, a dresser, a nanny, 3 secretaries, a personal assistant, lady-in-waiting, 2 gardeners, flower arranger, and a dog walker. I'm just waiting for the partridge in a pear tree. An accountant was brought in to trim this excess, and he asked one member of staff what he did around the place, and he replied that he picked up dog poo. Well, I think that's quite an admirable profession. But then he asked the man next to him, said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I help him." Even when the electricity company threatened to turn her electricity off over unpaid bills, she refused to sign the cheque, preferring to yell and berate the messenger that actually brought it to her attention. We hear quite a bit about yelling and berating staff for hours over the phone, particularly during car trips. And this is the quote: "She will sit on the phone screaming at employees and reducing everyone to wrecks. Then she'll wonder why everyone is so unhappy." In 2010, we hear again about unpaid bills. Now, is that the fault of the divorce settlement that actually happened 14 years earlier? By that stage, she'd earned millions and millions of pounds several times over. She really made the most use out of that Duchess title and association with the royal family. Yet small businesses were having to sue her to get rather small bills paid. An artist who she commissioned to paint Prince Andrew's portrait and place it in an expensive silver case with Sarah's crest on it, of course, had to send gentle reminders for over a year. Yet Sarah received lots of great publicity from that about the wonderful gift she actually gave Prince Andrew. Accountants, a family-run photographic business, spirit guides, and worse, staff. She owed £17,000 to Robert Owen, for example, for over 2 months' work. An aide ran up his own credit card to the tune of £8,000 for her own personal needs. A trainer that was kept on retainer that she only used about twice in the year was constantly waiting for payment that never came. A newsagent, the local butcher, the dry cleaner. Over 200 entities were owed money by this woman. Many small business owners that were in no position to fund the Duchess's lifestyle. How is this excusable? Really? How? Explain it to me. I can't understand, why do people keep making all these inane excuses for this woman after decades of appalling behaviour? Why do they swallow her PR spin, hook, line and sinker? And one of the worst ones, one of the lamest excuses is, well, at least she never badmouthed the royal family. Of course she didn't. She's not going to bite the hand that feeds her, that has fed her for over 2 decades. But what do you think Sarah My Story was? It was it was the spare of its day. And unlike Harry, Sarah's smart. You can't continue to successfully earn from your decades-long association with the royal family, in my opinion, grift off that association, if you aggressively attack them. So there was a repeat of the sheer wastage displayed over a decade earlier when the Duke and his deputy finally stepped in. They made staff redundant that hadn't been paid for over 6 months, including a driver who'd provided faithful service for over 10 years, her dresser, and Sally Fish, her right-hand woman, who had served her for 15 years. Not only had they not been paid for over 6 months, they were made redundant and then asked to work out their notice for free. Now, an understandably disgruntled staff member revealed the greed and wastefulness, but before I get into that, I can understand why disgruntled staff felt they needed to speak out. I really do, because they're muzzled by NDAs. I think there should be an exception to NDAs. I think a lot of people should be given whistleblower status so they can just finally tell the truth. Anyway, this greed and wastefulness, saying that every night she would demand a whole side of beef, a leg of lamb and a chicken, which would be laid out banquet style, very Henry VIII banquet style. And often there would just be her and Beatrice and Eugenie, and it would all go to waste. And some nights they wouldn't even touch it. They'd just sit there eating kettle chips, apparently. No effort was made to refrigerate the food after they deemed that they'd finished with it. No effort was made at all to preserve it, to give it to people in need, because she didn't want to eat leftovers the next day. Also, 25 cases of luggage when she travelled. At least 5 of them were packed with toiletries and makeup, with excess luggage bills in the thousands of pounds. And you might say, well, how's that any of your business? What does that matter? That's up to her. Well, I would agree with you, but be aware, in this time, small business owners were bearing the burden of unpaid invoices. This is totally bonkers. But more concerning, we read how Sarah's personal expenses affected the charity she created and supported. A World in Action film claimed money earmarked for Romanian orphans had been eaten up by Sarah's generous expenses, and it's reported that she personally pocketed £7,000 for an article that Hello magazine did about her trip to an orphanage. Really, Hello magazine has been keeping this ship afloat, I've got to say. The finances of the Duchess's American charity Chances for Children also came under security. One investigation and tax record showed that less than half of the £110,000 donated for charity actually made way to the sick children. And where was Sarah when all this was reported on? She was on holiday in the Bahamas with her kids. Some charities received nothing at all. The Sarah Ferguson Foundation claimed to help the Littlest Lamb Orphanage with a substantial donation to build a children's home, but the director, Myra Reed, said they never received a penny. It's reported that Andrew paid off many of her debts. We know that it's been intimated that Epstein certainly paid off a lot of her debts, and it's probably likely that the Queen had to put her hand in her pocket yet again as well. I don't know why people fall for the PR spin that the Queen held Sarah in great affection and that they had a close relationship. The Queen held a relationship because of her granddaughters. But the fact that you just swallow this PR spin when the Queen has never verified any of it, and a lot of it was actually put out after the Queen's death, I just find that gobsmacking. Then there are all these unhealthy obsessions with men, many who weren't actually interested. But that didn't stop Sarah. On a trip to New York, Sarah asked if John F. Kennedy Jr. was in town, and she invited him for drinks and dinner at her hotel. I wonder if she was planning to pay the bill. Anyway, only to cancel at the last minute, because the current John Jr.'s girlfriend, Daryl Hannah, was less than thrilled with the whole idea. But you see, that didn't put her off. She scoured magazines for articles about him. She cut out pictures of him in his swimming trunks and talked to her friends about him, whether he would like certain aspects of her personality. She builds this fantasy up in her head into something incredibly real. And the fact that she's never met the man or likely to doesn't seem to matter. Kevin Costner was evidently besieged with phone calls, quite raunchy ones apparently. He reputedly told friends she's a woman crying out for help, which is very kind and very diplomatic, but I just wish people would start telling the truth. Then Tiger Woods, she flew 1,500 miles just to meet him, and she confessed to Piers Morgan over a long, boozy lunch. Don't forget, she used to meet up with Piers Morgan when he was editor of The Mirror. You still think she doesn't say anything about the royal family behind their back? "I'm in love," she said over Tiger Woods. When Morgan replied he didn't think Tiger would have time to fit her into his rather busy schedule, she said, "Well, I'm going to follow him around the course a bit and see how we get on." In less polite circles, that'd be called stalking, wouldn't it? Tiger certainly looks less than impressed. I've no doubt there will be many more revelations about Sarah in Andrew Lownie's book when it's released on August the 14th. I think it will be refreshing to get closer to the truth rather than more deceptive spin. Now, just before I go, I just want to address something I've noticed in the comments that may gain momentum. And it's this suggestion that Andrew Lownie is somehow part of a grand conspiracy, that his book is part of a campaign to bring down the monarchy, and that's why there's been so many attacks on the monarchy, particularly over the last month. He is not part of any campaign. He's a standalone operator that actually researches and writes his own books. He's been researching this for over 4 years. He's not part of any Johnny-come-lately campaign by anyone else, and any other quite silly books, in my opinion, that have been released recently, he has nothing to do with it. So I just wanted to put that to bed, because I would not be interviewing him or covering this book if I believed that that was the case, and I'm absolutely confident that it isn't the case. My belief is that truth protects the innocent people in the royal family that are doing good work, but trying to brush it under the carpet and hope that it won't pop up, by their enemies in the future, that's just, a pipe dream. It always will. So the best thing is to bring it out in the open and fix it. Thank you very much. Although I can't announce anything yet, I'm fairly confident that my interview with Andrew Lownie will be published within days. Bye.